As we get into a new war, this war is World War One. We're going to look at the causes of World War One before we get into it. Now, there are many causes with World War One, but these are the main and largest of them. So the first one is imperialism. You had the world scrambling around trying to get different areas, and by the world, I guess I should say major European countries, a little bit with the United States, but at this point, the United States is considered not first rate, a little bit below, but certainly not first rate as far as imperialism goes. So they go ahead and scramble around trying to get different things. Part of the reason is if you have these different areas, you can get commodities. You can also sell to those markets. So if you're like, I don't know, Britain and you're looking at India, you could go ahead and make sure they only buy things from you. In doing so, you create a monopoly. You can raise the prices and go ahead for that. Now, the other thing is you protect your own nation's industrialization, one, by exporting the goods and making other people buy it, and also to import the goods from your own colony, which helps you A, for cheaper, and B, able to have those things. It also hinders trade in Europe because people, you don't need other European nations to trade with. So you can see here on the map, the United States is in the green, so they don't own much, just Hawaii, Midway, a couple other islands over there, Samoa, whatnot. And then you have Great Britain, which is the pink, and they own a ton of stuff. India, lots of Africa. You can see Canary and Egypt. You can also see in North America, they own Canada. They also own Australia, Madagascar, some other southern Africa areas. The French own northern Africa for the most part. You can see that there. And then the Germans own Germany, a couple little holdings around in Africa. Now, social Darwinism attitudes, which basically said that all these places in Africa, these indigenous people, were, well, they were untamed. And so the idea was to get rid of the devil and convert to Christianity those areas. So they sent out groups into those areas, being good Christians. Growing tension between European countries. So you have Germany and France, especially. Germany encouraged France to build colonies in Africa. Like, hey, maybe if you do that, you won't know about Alsace-Lorraine, um, which is a somewhat contested area. It's right above Switzerland, but in between where France and Germany connect today. So it's in between Luxembourg and Switzerland, but it's on the French and German border, if that gives you an idea. Now, Germany becomes concerned with the influence France and Great Britain began to have in Africa because they own so much, when in reality, Germany should have been kind of maybe downplaying Africa to France a little. Now, you have political tensions because in the early 1900s, European nations have domestic issues that could cause great discontent and violence. For example, you have politicians turn to war as means to divert attention away from internal problems. Like, hey, if we go to war, we don't have to deal with this, or we can slide this under the issue. So issues with Ireland, they want independence. Well, if you can get them back to war, you can get something like that, or military buildup, then you create unity. Labor strifes, again, wages stagnant and economy struggling. Wars typically help an economy if you win, or at least if you're providing a lot of those things. Now, France has the Dreyfus Affair. It was a Jewish official falsely accused of giving military secrets to Germans. And this, of course, gets an anti Semitism in France. Like a lot of different times in the world, there's anti Semitism, which is basically we don't like Jewish people because they're Jewish. It's a race or religious thing against a group of people. It also shows that they were not happy with the Republican form of government. And in Russia, Russia has a war with Japan, and they thought they were going to walk all over them, when in reality, the Japanese new navy destroys Russia and it leaves Russia bankrupt. They also have a revolution that is tied to economic problems, but ultimately we'll see more of the Russian Revolution there. And we also see Parliament supposed to rule in conjunction with Tsar Nicholas II, but that didn't last long as they kind of went back to having a czar. And then Germany, workers' agitation on the rise. And this is because they become more organized and they also fear a socialist revolution. They want to be more of a free area, but they also want to have success. And then finally, in Austria-Hungary, there's constant threat of nationalist movements. Now, part of this is other groups. So, for example, you have Bosnia or you have these other Slavic areas that want to have their own nation. This is not the nationalist movement of saying, yay, let's go Austria-Hungary. It's, hey, let's leave Austria-Hungary to create our own nation. So you have some alliances. The European countries form military alliances to protect themselves from the other colonies. The first is the Triple Alliance, which happened in 1882. It was kind of hidden. It was Germany and Austria-Hungary and Italy kind of come together, and so they have close relationships, and they tried to somewhat diplomatically isolate France. And the big reason is they didn't want France to reclaim Alsace-Lorraine region. Now, the alliance, the three emperors league, you can see there, Germany, Austria, and Russia, that didn't last long because Austria pulls out of the league, and you can see the Triple Alliance, which started in 81 but was official in 82. Then France makes a monetary investment into Russia, and they start getting all sorts of other things going with Russia. But they started in 1891, and then finally in 94, they give them some money to keep Germany in check. In 1904, the Britain and French countries come together, and Russia is like, hey, I kind of want in there. So they get into the Triple Entente, those three nations you can see. Now, this is kind of the different areas. The yellow is neutral, so you still have places like Spain and the Nordic areas, as well as Iceland, are, well, they're pretty free. The problem here is that we have, you can see, a large landmass, and they are pretty well joined together. Now you have nationalism. Nationalism emerged as in new nations. So the newer the nation, kind of, you have to have that to kind of say, hey, let's do these things. Maybe we don't make as much money as everybody else, but we're Germany. Hey, we're Italy. And to keep in mind, Italy and Germany just became nations relatively soon before this. Now, the Slavic people, as I've been mentioning, which were in Austria-Hungary, no longer want to be under control. And so they go ahead and get their own southern empire. Now, they do end up by getting it, and their big brother, Russia, they kind of have this treaty with them. This is going to be very, very important later on. So keep in mind Russia and Serbia. Now, you have some militarism. During this time, people start building up their militaries, because if you build up your military, you can go ahead and, well, you can attack, but you can also use it as defensive. Hey, we are big and strong. Don't fight us. So they are worried about the rest of Europe as they start building up. Now, when France starts building up, Germany builds up. When Germany builds up, France builds up. And this just goes back and forth, as well as with Great Britain, Russia, and all these other major countries. The smaller countries do the same thing. They just don't have as much power. So then the crazy thing here is on June 28th, 1914, Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife were driving down the road, kind of taunting in these areas, and he was assassinated by a guy who wanted to leave Austria-Hungary. He wanted the Bosnians to be able to leave, and because of that, he assassinated him trying to do that. Well, the problem was this went through and created a huge problem. You can see there, Gavril Princip, he wanted anarchy and a revolution, a member of the Backhand Organization. Now, the response was Otto von Bismarck, who is a German. He says, hey, there's no evidence of Serbia complicity. And Austria-Hungary says, we don't care. We're going to go after them. So they go to punish Serbia because, again, they don't want Serbia in that region, and Serbia just broke apart from them. So they said, stop pan-Slavic movement. So they go ahead to regain their prestige. Now, they have 10 demands from Austria-Hungary to Serbia. But the big thing here is that, to keep in mind, Serbia, they were really tough things. Like, they could not agree to all of them. Otherwise, they would not be a nation. So they agreed to most of them, but say, hey, we're not going to do a couple of these small things, which were really not that big of a deal. But Austria-Hungary says, too bad, so sad, you can't do it all. It's all or nothing. We're taking you out. So Russia advises Serbia, don't give up national sovereignty. Now, Britain allowed Britain, France, Germany, Italy to mediate. That's what they say. Hey, let's just mediate this thing. Serbia responds. So they meet all demands, but would not grant Austria-Hungary authority to operate in Serbia. Makes sense. Austria-Hungary deemed this as a cause of war and severed all diplomatic relations with them. So they go ahead and get ready for war. Now, when they go ahead and get ready for war, you can see a couple different things. Now, Austria-Hungary says, hey, we're going to war. Everybody else says, oh, come on. The Serbians say, hey, Russia, we need your help. Russia says, we're coming in. Then Germany says, if you're going in, we're going in. France says, hey, we're on Russia's side. Britain, come with us. Italy says, whoa, we're coming in too. So now you get the World War. This is what really causes it, but it could not have happened if you did not have all of these things before.